Do you realise how magical Edinburgh is? Many Scots probably don't. You have to see it through an outsider's eyes. But even then, you might not realise how Edinburgh made this place possible. If you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then click the subscribe button at the bottom right of the screen and ring the notification bell to be told when I upload new videos. In the meantime, let me tell you a story. In 1790, George Washington, the president of a newly formed country, had a problem. His legislature had passed an act agreeing to build a new seat of government in 10 years on a piece of farmland of 10 square miles, carved out of 2 of those 13 states that had rebelled against their rightful king. Well, one of the Hanoverians that replaced the rightful king, but detail. His problem was time. 10 years just wasn't enough of it. New York and Philadelphia were established towns who'd be more than happy to host the functions of government and legislature as they did now and had done before. Why go to all the bother of all that new building? Delays, missed deadlines, cost overruns. Washington the man and Washington the capital needed results quick. And one of those newfangled democracy thingies, he'd never build a city in time to keep the voters happy. But he might be able to finish the president's house. If you want public buildings done on time and to price, where do you go? That's right, Scotland. Scots stonemasons were prized throughout Europe. You'll find their work in Italy, France, Spain and Russia as well as Britain. They already had a Scotsman running the quarrying operation to bring sandstone up the Potomac River, although he fell out with the Irishman who designed the building. I know, what are the chances? Anyway, Thomas Jefferson knew another Scotsman called James Traquair, a respected stonemason and carver. He knew that original Scotsman, Colin Williamson, was his name. He was the Highlander who ran the quarrying operation and built foundations on which the White House stands, as well as fighting with Irish architects. So, there was much more to do and more men needed to do it. Did Traquair know anyone else? Letters were sent to Scotland, but nobody responded. That might not be entirely surprising. Edinburgh New Town seems like an old town now, but in the late 18th century, as Traquair's letters went unanswered, it was still being built. It reeks of the neoclassical elegance the old Reekie above it lacked. When you look at the new town, this neoclassicist wet dream laid out in Georgian splendour with street names that call out Hanoverian royalty, it seems ironic that it had first been advocated by James, Duke of York, in whose name Jacobites would fight. Doric and Ionic neoclassical columns supported the weight of Enlightenment thinking with Herculean effort as the Athens of the North sculpted a monument to town planning. 2 squares linked by one grand street and its parallel playmates. They sold plots to follow the outline of the streets. Each building would have a common outer facade, but the individual builder had the flexibility to do what he wanted inside the Georgian shell. You could buy a plot and build what you wanted inside, so long as it fitted into the theme outside. This gave loads of scope for builders, architects and entrepreneurs just like the modern day. Take out a mortgage, buy the land, speculate to accumulate and pocket the cash. Edinburgh was packed with tradesmen to support this booming development. There were more stonemasons than you could shake a measuring stick at. Just the kind of craftsmen that they wanted across the Atlantic. But that didn't help the letter-writing commissioners back in Washington. Now, as luck would have it, the commissioners heard that a Philadelphia merchant called George Walker, originally from Falkirk, was heading back across the Atlantic. Maybe he could succeed where the letters had failed. But how do you entice folks away from a boom time in one of the most significant flourishing cities in the world to go to a recently emancipated colony? Well, when George Walker arrived here in 1793, it seemed like the boom times were over. To the east there were fine townhouses, but as you came west to what would be Charlotte Square, there were unfinished buildings, abandoned plots, downed tools. All that was left were moneylenders and unfinished mortgages, half completed in stone. You see, the American Revolutionary War had given way to the French Revolutionary War, and that sucked up resources and building had ground to a halt. I've even seen some commentators say that building was forbidden. Priorities. And yet there was no rush of men seeking work in foreign climes. Because in the age of mercantilism, Britain didn't want its ideas, machinery or specialist tradespeople leaving the country. And when war was on, no able-bodied tradesman was to leave. That's why laws had been passed, fines and imprisonment for those who tried to leave and those who encouraged them. George Walker couldn't advertise in a national newspaper. Stonemasons required for overseas work. Experienced craftsmen prepared to get their collars felt for lack of patriotism should apply by emailing george.walker@honestgov, I was only looking for the words for rulbritannia.co.uk. No, he couldn't do that. What Walker did was to head to the somewhat disreputable theatre district of Shakespeare Square. It would have been here at the top of Leith Street, on the corner of Princess Street and North Bridge. Of course, in those days, North Bridge had only recently been built. There were no bagpipers. Anyway, there he was to seek out a certain Alexander Crawford, who was apparently a friend to America. But it turned out Crawford had died. However, his widow sent Walker to look for the deceased man's business partners, John and James Williamson. Let's see if we can find them. I'm heading off to 66 Queen Street in the new town. Further along this street, I'll be performing my live show Scotland Made the World at the Stand Comedy Club during Edinburgh Fringe in August. I'll also be showing folks around the new town as part of my 11-day group tour of Scotland in autumn. Only 2 tickets left. And as part of my 7-day ultimate Jacobite tour in April. Get this, I'll take you around Scotland to the important Jacobite sites as I tell you the full story of the half-century of uprisings in Scotland, and we'll do it all in 4- and 5-star hotels with full board. If you want dates and tickets for my show or group tour information, then click the link top right or in the description below. Or for group tours, email alexis@scotlandhistorytours.co.uk. You see that blue plaque? It tells you that John and James Williamson built this house. They're notable because after they built it, the change in circumstances and lack of work meant that they were the first 2 to sign up to the project of surreptitiously crossing the Atlantic to build the house that at this point people didn't realise would be called the White House. But Walker was going to need more than 2 stonemasons. Where would you get them? Let's try the Old Town. At the bottom of Blackfriars Street, off the Royal Mile, you'll find Lodge number 8, Lodge of Journeymen. I won't lie, I know almost zero about the working of the Masonic Order, and that's the way they like it. But in researching this video, I've learned enough to know that this place is unique. If I understand it right, and I'm not 100% sure I do, then Masonic lodges get their establishing charter from the Edinburgh Heed Bummer Lodge. Edinburgh Mary's Chapel has the oldest Masonic minute of any lodge in the world. Apart from Kilwinning, it's older, and I don't entirely understand why. Kilwinning gets all hot under the collar because they used to have records, but theirs were lost in a fire. There was a big legal hoo-ha and who was first, but by the time the fire came to light, the Lodge of Edinburgh had all the lawyers and possibly one or two arsonists. Being from Perth, I'm pretty sure we would have had one earlier. The point is that Scots invented everything and were good at keeping secrets. But Lodge 8 Journeymen is the only lodge that doesn't have a charter. This document from 1713 is what gives it its history and status. Before 1600, the Grand Lodge of Edinburgh, like any similar medieval guild, only accepted its skilled tradesmen, stonemasons. Now, an unintended consequence of our Presbyterian Reformation was that ornate palaces and places of worship were less common. That impacted stonemasons and lodge revenues. The Lodge of Edinburgh started to accept gentlemen from the moneyed classes. Money inevitably causes disagreement, and some of the actual stonemasons went off and set up this Journeyman Lodge. Now, its members were only stonemasons, and the perfect place to find the guys George Walker was looking for. When he was here, he might also have seen the iconic blue blanket banner. Hold on. It's now kept here at Ashfield in the New Town. They say that James III presented this blue blanket banner to the trades of Edinburgh in 1482, after they helped him escape imprisonment in Edinburgh Castle. Edinburgh tradesmen then carried it at the Battle of Flodden, and a copy of it is carried to this day as the trades banner in the procession of the Edinburgh Ride of the Marches each September. Now back to Lodge 8. I hope you appreciate that. What I'm getting at is that this historic lodge is considered to have been created in 1707. They'd already been making masons before the Grand Lodge of Scotland was dreamed up in 1736. So they neither had, needed, or wanted a charter. When George Walker arrived from America, he was taken in as a friend and given a hearing. He explained that the Washington commissioners were offering good wages and paid travel for those that would break the travel embargo and go to the USA. Now, 6 more master craftsmen signed up: Alexander Scott, George Thompson, James White and Alexander Wilson, plus 2 fine carvers, Robert Brown and James McIntosh. This is the minute book. In the membership book here, you can see beside James White's name that his dues would be resumed when he is again in the country. You can also see Alexander Reed, and by his name we're told why he hasn't paid his dues. It simply says, in America. When our Edinburgh masons boarded the ship that would spend a month sailing to Virginia, there must have been mixed emotions. Curiosity as to what they'd find in this new world. Uncertainty of making what must have been their longest, maybe their first, sea voyage. Fear of being discovered on a trip that they knew was forbidden. Equanimity of heading off for just another job. Who knows? Remember, Britain was the great power, and this new country was the backwater. They could never have imagined how iconic the building that they were about to construct would be 250 years later. The stone for what we call the White House was quarried 40 miles down the Potomac River from this new Washington, D.C. It's a soft, moist sandstone when it's first quarried. That makes it great for shaping. But our Scottish stonemasons warned the Washington commissioners that you couldn't leave the porous aqueous stone untreated and exposed to the elements. And so, back home here, their habit had been to protect this type of stone building with a thick whitewash coat. So the finished stone of the President's house was covered with a lime-based whitewash. The reason we call it the White House is because Scots invented everything. They would have spent years working in the White House. The first president to live there moved in 1800, they tell me. Did our masons return to Scotland? Did some carve out their own future in America? In the years since then, the White House interior was burned down in the War of 1812. Sorry about that. It was remodelled inside in 1948, but the masonry remains. Our boys certainly left their mark. In this book, you can see the marks that each mason would use to identify their work. These marks will remain to this day on the stones that built the White House. You know the story of the Giant's Causeway? The causeway was supposed to have linked the north of Ireland and Fingal's Cave off the west coast of Scotland. But in a squabble between a Scottish giant and an Irish giant, the causeway was torn down, leaving the peculiar rock formations at the two end points. You know this. When I think of the Irish designer and the Scottish masons who created that building, I like to muse on two giants sitting, playing card games, using the mason's mark on the huge chunks of finished stone to play a game of snap. With one giant using blocks from Washington's White House and the other using stones from Edinburgh's New Town. And every time there was a match, we'd hear the thud of a huge hand crashing down in a mid-Atlantic giant's card table. I don't know if you realise it, but Scots had an even bigger impact on what became Washington, D.C. And of course, I went there to make a video about it. And it's coming up on screen now. Support the channel by clicking top right to become a Patreon member or buy me a coffee in the description below. In the meantime, ha mé an dóchas gún bíal am alive. Chéri an drast.